Hey guys, global servers are about to get one of the most important dungeons in the entire game. That is the Ruined Temple Seal. 6 summoners will come together to defeat the boss and reap the rewards. The rewards are all of the wonderful seal weapons, which are the best for endgame, precious seal boxes with gems, other effect stones, and materials for your 6-star blacksmithing. This is the only place to farm certain materials needed for that 6-star equipment. It's an important dungeon, and I'm going to walk you through it. Let's go. Here are a couple mechanical things to understand about the boss before we get into the list of monsters. The boss does technically take damage, but his defense is so high that you can't break it, so regular damage is drastically reduced, but it does add up over time. Your main source of damage will be dots, or damage over time. This boss takes 5 times the damage from dots. So, you and your teammates will need to bring a variety of dot monsters. Dots include burn, bleed, frostbite, poison, and shock. The more dots and the more types of dots, the more the damage will be, and the faster your runs will be. Another mechanic to know is about monsters that explode dots. The easiest to get is Tatu. She explodes burn, meaning the boss will take massive amounts of damage based on the level of burn. She is very popular in Seal. Smokey, Rondel, and Sir Gideon actually do the same things, but none of them are very useful in other places, and they are nat 5s, making them expensive to build. Another mechanic you should think about is the difference between a ranged monster and a melee monster, and how that might interact with the Seal boss. While in the long run it won't make a huge difference which one you pick, I tend to lean towards ranged dot monsters as the preferred type, as they typically will get off more attacks than a melee monster. You are on follow mode this entire fight, so as you move around, your melee monsters will be getting less hits in. But I always have that monster on Soul Link so I can spam the right skill on cooldown. Whereas if I have a ranged dot monster, they're a little bit better in the non-Soul Link position. Again, not a big deal, most people do this dungeon very easily with just about any dot monster that they choose. Your summoners also bring dots with their different weapons. Orbia is typically bringing lots of burn with her fire staff, while her new wind skill 1 does electric shock. Cleef with his upgraded fire mace brings both bleed and burn. That's what I use. And Kina brings frostbite with her water hammer and burn with her fire hammer. The fire hammer also brings monster skill cooldown reduction, which is really nice for this dungeon. As of the making of this video, the global servers don't yet have that second skill for their summoners, but when that does come, I would suggest switching to it, especially if you're a Cleef main. Before we get into a list of monsters, let's talk about total team composition. There are generally 2 typical teams that you could bring, and it all depends on what the other party members are bringing, and also what summoner you are. Team 1, and this is the typical team, would be a healer/reviver, dot monster, and a move speed buffer. This is your typical safe team. The second type of team is healer and double dot monsters. I would only switch to this type of team if I notice that the rest of my teammates are already bringing monsters like Bernard for that move speed buff. You typically only need 3 to 4 Bernards at most in your entire party, and that will take care of the move speed buff for the entire party. I'm not going to necessarily create a tier list of these monsters, because it honestly doesn't matter too much. Any of these monsters that I'm about to give you will work just fine in the sealed dungeon, as long as they're runed relatively tanky with high accuracy. More on that in a bit. There are a ton of monsters that actually fit the bill for being a decent dot monster. The best way to pick a monster is honestly to go to the boss's strategy section. Click on the hashtag and the dot type, and then look through the list of monsters. See if you have any 4 stars or even 5 stars that might fit the bill and fit this nicely. Typically, you're going to be looking for monsters that do dots on multiple skills. Tessarion is a great example. Right now, he's extremely meta in PvP, as well as extremely useful in PvE content. He also makes for a really solid dot monster with fire or burn on 2 of his skills. Okay, let's get into some 3-star units that are really decent in this sealed dungeon. Let's start out with the popular Tatu, the Fire Pixie. Not only does she apply burn, but she also explodes burn. Burn is one of the most popular dots that will be applied to the boss, so this explode burn from Tatu will gain you a lot of damage and likely put you at the top of the damage charts. We also have the Fire, Water, and Dark Mummies, who all apply level 2 of their respective dots and are really great little monsters. There's Rizak, the Dark Garuda, and good old Ralph, who applies electric shock. Personal shout out to the Dark Elemental, who I'm building on my LD account. In the 4-star department, you've got some good options. There's Sarah, the Water Cowgirl, who applies Frostbite on skill 1 and increases the duration with skill 2. There is aptly named Seal, who applies both Poison and Bleed, which is really nice to have 2 dots all in one monster. There's Ciceru, who applies Frostbite on her basic attack and skill 1. There's the Dark Lizard Man, who applies Poison on 2 different skills. And if you have them, there's Gina and Grego, who both apply Poison pretty well. For 5 stars, we have some good options. Tessarion applies Burn with his basic attack and skill 2, while also doing more damage based on the level of burn. Akamamir is a very popular monster as he applies level 2 shock and decreases dot duration with his basic attack. Tayor is also a nice option as he applies Frostbite on his basic attack and skill 1. Plus, he's already built like a truck, so you might not need to rerune him. Plus, he's a top tier monster, so worth building him. Lagamaron is also nice as he applies a lot of shock, but lacks usefulness in other content. There are lots of monsters that can work for this dungeon. If you use a monster that wasn't listed, let me know down in the comments so others can learn as well. Alright, enough about the monsters, let's fight the boss. The boss has a couple types of attacks and all of them hurt. Unlike Naraka, you need to avoid all damage from this boss as much as possible. This first attack is a double cone, so just stick inside the safe area. This attack is just a forward cone, so move behind the boss. This next attack is the one that gets most people. He's going to slam his elbow down and do massive damage to one side and then quickly do damage to the other side. You obviously want to avoid the damage from the first attack, but you need to stay close to this edge because you will need to move and maybe even dodge back to the other side. He does this switch very fast and it catches a lot of people out. Make sure your units are set to follow, make sure you have that move speed buff from Bernard, and make sure to have your fingers ready for that dodge move. The next attack is a straight line charge, so just go sideways to avoid the damage. The boss will repeat and cycle through these same attacks, so stay close to your group so everyone is getting the buffs from the rest of your team. The boss will do all of these moves in different orders, so be prepared for whatever the boss throws at you at any time. At some point around 70% HP, the boss will start a series of jump attacks that are very telegraphed, but will catch you out if you don't know how they work. He will charge jump into the middle of the area and this signals the next phase of jump attacks. He will jump up and create a red circle where he lands, which of course you want to avoid. But then there is this shockwave directly afterwards that catches a lot of people out, so when the boss jumps up and you see the first circle, you want to be near the edge. Have move speed buff up and maybe even roll back into the middle to avoid that secondary shockwave. He will do this a couple of times and eventually switch back to the original basic attacks. At around 50% HP, the boss will spawn some suicide bombers. There are 3 every time. They will instantly kill you if you are in the circle when the bomb goes off. They are easy enough to kill if you go straight for it and take it down. You don't have to destroy them all, but you can see that the space here to move gets very, very tight, and having a nice open area is really helpful. It's almost always worth it to take out at least one of these bombs. While this is happening, the boss will use and attack this giant wave attack. It will power up, and then it will keep going in a wave, so you don't want to be caught in front of it. Get to the side or behind the boss. While this is happening, watch out for those suicide bombers, and make sure that you're not running into one of those circles. There is another attack that the boss does that's a giant AoE surrounding him with a safe area in the middle. With this attack, the boss will also cleanse himself of all debuffs, so I suggest that you save up your mana during this charge up phase and switch to your dot monster and spam the dot after the attack goes off and he cleanses himself. The boss will continue to rotate through his basic attack moves, with suicide bombers spawning to make things difficult. At around 40%, the boss will jump to the middle and will go into an invincible phase. Somewhere on the map, a guard will spawn. You need to look around the map and immediately run to it. If you're Orbia, switch to your wind staff to land some defense breaks, as this thing has a lot of defense. Just nuke this thing down as fast as you can, because if you don't kill it before the red AoE attack reaches the edge of the circle, you will die. So this is technically your first DPS check, but it's pretty easy as long as everyone is attacking it and not the boss, and you also have a defense break. Once defeated, the guard soldier will drop a shield bubble. You need to stay inside of this shield or you will die. At this point, the boss will go back to cycling his regular attacks, the wave attack and his jump attacks, all while suicide bombers are trying to ruin your day. This last half of the battle gets really crazy, but stay on top of your team, dodge the big red stuff, and make smart decisions on where you move. Keep dodging and applying dots all the way till the end and you will be just fine. The reward system is a little funky. At the end, all 6 party members will roll a dice and your rewards will be based on that dice roll. The one with the highest roll typically gets the best rewards. Lowest rewards are legendary runes and crafting material, and the highest level rewards can be gear, up to 5-star Awakened 4. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up the guide for the new Seal raid boss. Make sure to try to get this done ASAP in the beginning of the week. I like to try to do this on Mondays with my guildmates. Since there's only 2 times that you can do it to get rewards, a lot of people are doing it early in the week, and you may have a harder time finding help or finding guildmates or even random party members to fill those seal slots towards the end of the week. Alright guys, that about wraps it up for me. If you have any questions, you can join our ever-growing community down in Discord. Got a link down below in the description. Also, if you have a question, leave a comment down below, and while you're down there, let me know what monster you're going to be building for Seal. As always, my name is Topher Smurf, telling you to keep on gaming.